Heavy is the head that has to manage all of this.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel.
We're now incentivized to buy what we already buy.
Fumbling through college had me building.
I also got some done on the other side.
And that was right around, I would say, May, maybe, right before renewing the lease for this property.
Welcome to the channel, Martha.
Thank you for having me here.
Oh, I was going to say, I am getting up there and age, I'll tell you what.
Bills paid by other people, life was never this good. I had to step back, knowing that it's...
Do you want to build wealth while you sleep? Well, then this is the right video for you, because my strategy is literally about living a financially free life and never, ever having to work again. You see, dividend growth investing is going to show you how even a small investment can lead to a lifetime of financial freedom. Now, if you watch my previous videos, then you absolutely know that I'm crushing it in the stock market year after year after year. I have not seen less than an 18% return in a decade of my investment journey. Now, before we continue, I want you to know that I am not your financial advisor. I am just an average guy on YouTube sharing my own life experiences with real money that I have continued to grow over a decade of time, right? Now, in the same breath, today I'm going to break it down to the smallest of smallest investment strategies that I can possibly give you today. It's so simple that even your grandma would be able to do this, okay? And it is the easiest way to invest for someone who is absolutely has no idea what they're doing. So the S&P 500 has been averaging about a 34%, right? 34% growth rate. And over a year's period of time, it typically ranges in a 10-year span, 10 to 12%. Now, for all of you who don't know, when you add dividends to your portfolio and you allow that to be reinvested and compound and compound and compound, and that dividend is compounding itself, that gives you an additional 2% growth year over year. So if you were someone who averaged 5% in terms of growth in their market, but you had dividends in your portfolio, your average would be around 7%. Year after year after year. Now, I won't lie to you. This strategy is not for everybody, because there are people who are chasing fast money. There are people who are chasing the riches right here, right now. They have no chill button. They have no wait. They're not trying to get their children to retire in 10, 15, 18 years. They're not trying to just send them off to college with a boatload of money. Those are the people who they might as well just skip this video, because what my strategy is for financial freedom, not just for you, but for everyone that is invested in your life, everyone that you have invested in, right? And so this strategy absolutely works, especially the younger you are, but it is not a shame to say, hey, I'm going to start this journey at 40. I'm going to start this journey at 50, because it is never too late to start making money. You hear me? It is never too late to make some money, right? So don't give up on yourself. Don't ever give up on yourself, because if you give up on you, then who else is going to be there for you, right? And so let's start off with an easy example. Again, the S&P 500. Now, although the S&P 500 has a very minimal fee of 0.003 or 0.001%, it is still a great investment, because they pay out a dividend, and that dividend is going to cover not only the fee, but it's also going to compound on top of the growth of the S&P 500. Now, the S&P 500 embodies the entire stock market. And so when you talk about the entire stock market, you're talking about the U.S. economy as a whole that is invested in the stock market, right? You're talking about Amazon, you're talking about Walmart, you're talking about McDonald's, you're talking about Microsoft, you're talking about you're talking about all these companies, Apple, all these American companies. And if you believe in America, then you would most likely believe in the S&P 500. And so when I talk about the S&P 500, I am talking about America's economy. Do you believe in it or do you not? And if the answer is yes, you believe in it, then it's a no-brainer. If you're going to live in this America, if you're going to work in this America, if you're going to breathe, eat, and sleep in this America, then you should invest in this America, because it's going to be it's going to be here till I die at the very least. That's my belief, right? Now, I'm going to start off pretty slow. I am not this old, but I wanted to start as far as 1990. If I invested $100, not a day, not every week, not every 2 weeks, not every 3 weeks, but every month, from 1990 to 2025, only in the S&P 500, just $100, that is essentially 15, 20, 35 years of age. If I had invested for 35 years, $100, I would have $758,067. Let me say that again. $758,067. A 36-year period of time with a $100 monthly contribution. Right? Now, let's bring it all the way up to my birth year, to 1997. Now, I started off with $2,000 invested in the market. But let's say in 1997, your initial investment is $10,000 only in the S&P 500. And then after that 10 grand, you never invest 10 grand again. You only invest $100, not every day, not every week, not every 2 weeks, not every 3 weeks, but $100 every month. That's $50 bi-weekly. That's $25 every week. You invest $25 a week. After 20, it's not even 29 years, because I'm not even that old myself, but after 28 years, you would have $324,270. Let's go all the way to 2015, right? Let's go to 2015. Your initial investment is $10,000, but you invest $100 a month for 10 years. That means altogether you've invested what? Let's say, what's like 12, 20, let's say $14,000. You've invested about $14,000, right? Wait, I'm doing some bad math. Hold on. So $100 a year is $1,200. Times that by 10, that's $12,000. Add that to your, times that by 10, that's $12,000. And then you add your $10,000 initial investment, that's $22,000. You've invested $22,000 in 10 years. You get back $63,431. All right. Now, everybody always talks about insurance. If you had insurance as a black family, it would change generations. It would be the reparations that we've all been asking for. Cops would stop killing black people. All these things would stop happening if we just simply had insurance. That's very powerful. That speech is absolutely mind-boggling. You can tell me the story of a 3-year-old who had life insurance and now they have $1 million policy because they had cancer at 3. Well, I can tell you that the percentage of people that would happen to is very minimal. Now, although I do believe that if everybody had life insurance, the black people would have reparations in an instant. In less than a decade, yes, lives would change drastically. Generations would change. People would change. Wealth would change in America in an instant. Absolutely. But what if everybody invested $500 a month? Not $100, but $500 a month over a 10-year period, with their initial investment only being $10,000. That is $6,000 a year that you're investing in yourself. That is $60,000 over 10 years. That's $70,000 in total investment. You would have had $178,354. Let me go ahead and look up how much the average person invests into life insurance in their lifetime. Let's see who can beat me to it. Write it in the chat. I'm not the fastest typer, am I? It sounds fast, but I'm maybe not the fastest typer. So the average person in their lifetime, a healthy 40-year-old on a $500,000 policy might cost around $334 annually for a man, $282 for a woman, right? A common recommendation is to purchase a policy with 5 to 10 times your annual income, spending 6% of your gross income. If a person owns $100,000 annually, the rule of thumb is $500 to $1 million. All right. But it doesn't tell me how long would they have invested over their entire lifetime. Now, let's see. Whole life insurance rates and age chart. Don't even need to get into that. The average person in their lifetime costs almost $320,000. $320,000. That means you're spending at least 30 years in this market paying, let's just say, what the average woman is paying, $282, right? 30 years of that. That's going back to 1995. 30 years spending over almost $300. If I spent $282, and I'm not a woman, but if I spent $282 over a 30-year period of time in just the S&P 500 and my initial investment was $10,000, I would have almost $900,000. To be exact, $896,967. Less than $4,000 short of $900,000. That, my friends, is insane. Someone spends over $320,000 on life insurance policies. That is the average. That is the average. How much have they invested in their own financial future? And so when we know, yes, you can get $1 million policy at some point. Yes, you can, change generations, change lives. You can do everything right. You can eat healthy, go to the gym, but things can happen that are out of your control. And you, my friends, although you want to live forever, you just don't think about investing right now for the long term. But because you didn't put in that time, because you didn't put in that effort, life insurance is your backup plan. Life insurance is not even the backup plan. It is the plan, right? That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me that the only plan you have is life insurance. So you did not value money enough to learn it, to grow it, to understand it, so that your children, your family, your friends would also have that same respect. What happens when you give them a life insurance policy that they don't have any respect for money? What happens? What happens then? They'll squander it. And you would have spent all that money for nothing. You might as well have just continued to squander it. You might as well have continued to waste it. You might as well have taken out a $10,000 policy because that's all they needed to bury you. Because if you taught them nothing about respect for money, then all they'll do is disrespect that same money. You understand? I always go back to this same home that I'm living in that I absolutely cherish and love, and I can absolutely see memories being built here. I go back to this because a woman lived in this home her whole life, died in this home, raised her children in this home. For a married couple to sell it, buy something bigger and buy something grander. I'm sure they put it to good use. But at the same time, if I gave that same $200,000 in hand, would that have been used in the same way to buy a bigger home, or would that have been used to go out and party, to live lavishly, to buy the nice, fastest car, or the newest thing on the block that makes you feel good about yourself? There's always, always, always something out there. How much of that was invested? How much of that was an emergency fund? How much of that was just to increase and enhance their lifestyle? You know, when people get a lot of money that they've never had to work for, that they've never watched accumulate time after time after time, what do you think that they do? They simply allow it to go to waste. They simply squander it. When I had to watch my account at 200, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, and more, I started to gain more respect for that money. I started to look at that money and say, wow, this is what I'm accomplishing time after time after time after time by investing, by continuing to grow it, by continuing to love on this. It is just getting bigger, getting better, and is looking healthier. And that investment keeps going, that dividends keeps growing. All of those things is a blessing. I did not love seeing 1 penny in dividends, 5 pennies in dividends, 10 pennies in dividends. I was poor, but learning and growing. Poor, but learning and growing. And over time, it started to yield good results. It started to yield great outcomes because I knew that if I just continued to pour into this, it wouldn't remain pennies. It would become dollars. It would become tens of dollars. It would become hundreds of dollars. And now I'm making more in dividends than I'm putting into my account on a monthly basis. And that, my friends, is an absolute blessing because it only took a decade to get that far. So imagine what the next decade is going to yield me with compound interest and accelerated growth potential. And now with Trump about to replace Jerome Powell, most likely, this is all speculation, but rates may drop. The stock market may rally because nobody wants to keep their money in savings when high yields interest is going down. So they're going to put it into the markets. The stock market is going to see even more all-time highs. And if you're not in the markets, you're going to miss it. You're going to miss it. So you have to start investing. I'm not telling you what to invest in, but you have to start investing. Now, if you like this video, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you learned something today, hit that like button for your boy. Now, today was my birthday weekend, so if you ain't hit the like button for me, then I don't know what to tell you. You already know I post on YouTube, Rumble, and Spotify for podcasters, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Peace.